Welcome, everyone, to the Public Safety and Veterans Subcommittee. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and we have quite a few cards from the public, so we'll start off with Karen Richmond, if you'd like to come on up. And today we're going to be discussing an appointment of a judge, so these are individuals that are supporting or not supporting.
I've been a practicing attorney since 2001, and I'm very familiar with John Tatz's work in the city courts, including the city of Phoenix. I'm very happy to be here in support of John Tatz for Phoenix Municipal Court Judge. John is a superior trial attorney. His knowledge of the law is unmatched. His writing is outstanding, and he is one of the most talented and thoughtful attorneys I know. Prosecutors, defense attorneys, juries, and judges all respect John and his abilities. In the courtroom, John is sharp and prepared, and he advocates for his clients with a thoughtful, straightforward, and very calm demeanor. John always manages to balance his unwavering advocacy and devotion to his clients with a respect for every single person in the courtroom, and for that, John is widely respected in the legal community. Finally, John's dedication to the legal community is unmatched. He has been a volunteer pro tem for Maricopa County Superior Court for many years, and he is always willing to help attorneys who need help. Whether it's helping an attorney understand a complicated area of the law, whether it's assisting with a case, whether it's stepping in last minute to help an attorney with court coverage, I and dozens of attorneys, especially in those who are public defenders in the city of Phoenix, can attest that John is always willing to help out. John is the kind of person that members of the community would want hearing their cases. He is smart, he is fair, and I thank you for your consideration for John Tatz for Phoenix Municipal Court Judge.
Thank you, Karen. Next we'll have, is it Marvin Morris?
Oh, it's Melvin.
Melvin, come on up, Melvin.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Melvin Morris. I am a Veterans Benefit Counselor at the Arizona Department of Veterans Services. I am here today, however, as a private citizen and a veteran, and my appearance here in no way constitutes an endorsement by the Arizona Department of Veterans Services or the Veterans Administration. So I'm just here as a veteran who has witnessed firsthand the work that Mr. Leonard has done in behalf of our population. I just happen to live and work in District 4, so on a daily basis almost, I'm at the Veterans Hospital, and I encounter veterans, as I said, almost daily, who approach me to thank me for the good work that we have done here in Veterans Court, and particularly the work of Mr. Leonard and our city prosecutor, Ms. George. Mr. Leonard has been thoroughly vetted by this committee, so you know about the 24 years as a criminal defense attorney, the 15 years here as a public defender, the 100 criminal defense cases, including death penalty cases, and the 2 years here at Veterans Court. I've personally witnessed Mr. Leonard's work ethic, which I find to be above and beyond the call of duty. In early in the morning, late at night, you can text him at any time with questions about your veterans. I've also witnessed his compassion and his strength, lest you think this is Veterans Court is not like cake and ice cream. We have to get tough with some of these people sometimes, so I've seen him, when necessary, having to crack the whip, so to speak. I have no doubt that Mr. Leonard will bring the same work ethic to his duties as a city of Phoenix judge. Thank you for your time. Good morning.
Thank you so much. Tracy. Come on up.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Tracy Van Buskirk, and I'm here to speak on behalf of and in support of Tina Solomon. I will say, however, she did not ask me to come. I came on my own because I thought it was important to tell you some things about Tina that she may not tell you herself. I met Tina roughly 11 years ago when I started working at the city prosecutor's office. We worked together for about 5 years. And during that time, Tina, I was assigned to her team. She was not my supervisor. She was not an official mentor. However, she took me under her wing, and she showed me what it was like to be a fair and a just, thoughtful prosecutor. And she did that not only for me, but she did that for other new attorneys as well. And that is because Tina cares about her cases, she cares about the city of Phoenix, and she cares about reaching a fair result. And it's from these experiences that I know that Tina would be an excellent judge. As a prosecutor, frequently you're faced with things like there's things that I can do and there's things that I should do. And that involves consideration about competing interests. What is the impact on a defendant? What is an impact on a victim? What is the impact on the community? And Tina always takes those things into consideration, and that is how she trained me. And I take some of the things that she taught me, and I use them still today. And those are also the type of considerations that a judge has to do on a daily basis when they make decisions. For individual defendants, what is going to work in this case? Should I follow a rehabilitative model? Does this person need to be sent a message? And Tina's experience in dealing with these things will help her to be a very good judge. And these experiences are things that she can take. Right now, she makes those types of recommendations to the court. But now, as a judge, she could make those final decisions and reach the just outcome on her own based on her experiences as a prosecutor. Along those lines, I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to see a busy PDC docket in city court, but there are a million things going on. And as a prosecutor, you're talking to the court, you're talking with defense attorneys, you're speaking with unrepresented defendants. Perhaps there's victims in the court. And frequently, the people that you're going to encounter are not having a good day. They're having one of probably the worst days of their life. Either they're a victim of a crime or they're charged with a crime. And their demeanor might not be respectful. It might not be nice. But I have been in court with Tina, and I have seen people in PDCs and other trials or et cetera, where people have been unkind to her or rude to her, and she responds with courtesy and respect. And those are the type of qualities that a city court judge needs to have, because they will encounter a diverse population, people coming in with all different types of motives, and all under the pressure of a busy docket.
Time's kind of ran out.
Okay.
Do you want to wrap it
may
up
I
real
make
quick?
one?
Absolutely.
Okay. When I think about what a good judge is, I think a good judge should be fair and thoughtful and courteous. And Tina Solomon is all of those things. And she knows the law. She excels at trial, but that is just one part of being a judge, as you know. She also has the additional qualities that I talked about: judicial temperament, she's thoughtful, and she's kind, and she cares about a just result. So I would ask that you recommend Tina for appointment to the city court bench. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have Jeff. Come on up.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Weintraub, and I've practiced criminal defense here in Arizona since 1996. And today I strongly recommend that the committee consider John Tatz for the position of Phoenix Municipal Court Judge. I first met John back in the late 1990s when he was an assistant Scottsdale City prosecutor. Over the next 20 years, Mr. Tatz has worked as a prosecutor for 6 years, a defense attorney for 14 years, as well as a pro tem judge for 5 years. As a criminal defense attorney, I've appeared in front of hundreds of municipal court judges. Mr. Tatz has every quality I'd like to see in a municipal court judge. He is extremely well respected in the criminal defense community. He's very knowledgeable of the laws in Arizona, and he conducts all of his work with honesty and integrity. As far as my practice is concerned, over the years, I started out as a sole practitioner, and I needed someone to go to. And over the years, I've approached John with many questions and concerns on my cases, and John has always taken the extra time to help me interpret the law and apply the facts to my cases. I feel that Mr. Tatz would have the same principles on the bench. He would study the law, evaluate the facts, and be fair and impartial to all victims, defense attorneys, prosecutors, as well as defendants. So for these reasons, I feel that Mr. Tatz would be an outstanding judge. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Mark.
Is this working? Not yet. Now we're working? Good morning, committee members. My name is Mark Nermer. I'm an attorney. I've been practicing law for 19 years now here in the Valley. I'm here to strongly encourage you to consider James Leonard for this position of judge. I've known Jim. I've known Jim since probably 1996. What he brings is a unique perspective. Before Jim was an attorney, he's been an attorney for 24 years, but before he was an attorney, he was a teacher. He was a high school teacher and a coach, and that brings a unique perspective because as I've watched Jim over the last 16 years of knowing him, when he deals with people, he takes an opportunity to teach them as well as counsel them as their attorney. Back in, he was a teacher back in California, and to this day there's students that reach out to him that he taught 20 years ago that reach out to him to this day and invite him to events, send him pictures of their kids. He made that kind of an impact on people 20 years ago. He moved to Arizona. While he was in California, he went to law school and he became an attorney, and he practiced as a criminal attorney, handling every type of case from traffic matters all the way to death penalty cases. So he has a huge range of criminal practice. He moved to Arizona and became a public defender at the Maricopa County Public Defender's Office, and he mentored a lot of us younger attorneys, not young anymore, but some of us attorneys when we were young. And he taught us not only to represent our clients the best we can, but also to take that time when we have with these people to try to teach them something, to talk to them about, like previous people said, that these people have made a bad decision, they're down on their luck. This is your opportunity to talk to them about maybe going to rehab, reconnecting with their family. But take that time to also not just be their lawyer, but to be a teacher to them. I watched Jim one time talk to a guy about, the guy was complaining that his crime wasn't, there's no victims in that crime. There's no victimless crime. Jim took 10 minutes and he, with dignity and respect, he taught this guy that all his actions have a ripple effect across the community, whether it affects people or businesses. And I saw that young man's mind frame change, and he actually understood what Jim was talking about. Jim's got that ability to connect with people, not only as an attorney, but as that teacher that he was. He has spent the last 3 years here in Veterans Court. He's been a public defender here since for 16 years at the city of Phoenix, and he's spent the last 3 years in Veterans Court. Between him and Patricia George at the prosecutor's office, they've helped thousands of veterans get through this process. So I strongly encourage you to give this appointment to James Leonard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Next we have Jerry.
Hi, my name is Jerry Keller. I'm here to speak and recommend John Tatz for this position as judge. Unlike some of the other folks you've heard from today, I am not an attorney. I have not seen the inside of a courtroom for several decades. But I think I do have a fairly good understanding of the role of the court in people's lives, specifically the court's role in changing the trajectory of people's lives. People come to court when they're either in trouble or they're a victim of something that was done to them. So for me, myself, I've known John now for over 30 years. John was very much made a change in trajectory for my life. I was the seventh of 9 children of 2 working parents. I had, at 17 years old, I had started to get in trouble. I was drinking, I was doing things I shouldn't have been doing, and I very well would have ended up in court more than likely. I met John because I was hired by the same company he worked for. John was charged with teaching me how to become an employee, a good employee. But what John did was he didn't just show me the functional aspects of the job. John didn't just teach me how to succeed and master the job. John taught me how to be an ethical person, how to treat other people with dignity, respect, integrity, how to just listen to people. These are skills that I use on a daily basis in my life. So because of John and his mentoring, I was able to have success in my life. I followed him into management very shortly thereafter, and I held those lessons that I learned from John close. And I have held those lessons close over the last 30 years. Because of that mentoring, I succeeded academically. I refocused myself on school, getting done with that, and doing well. I graduated from college. I was 5th in my class. In business, I assumed a leadership role. I was able to not only mentor the people that work directly for me, but I mentor my fellow managers and people that I work with. As an example, my company, in the last 24 years since I've been with them, we've gone from somewhere around 20th in our industry to we're number 3 worldwide. And then personally, because of John's role in my life, I have been able to raise my stepdaughter from 7 to 24. And she's got 2 degrees. She's very successful of her own right. But again, those are things that would not have happened were it not for John intervening in my life and helping me change the trajectory that I was on. And again, it is my understanding, but that is the most important thing that the court does for the people that enter the court. They help change people's trajectories. And John is very well equipped to do that. In fact, I would say he is intrinsically driven in that direction. And I know he's changed my life. That's it. Thank you for considering.
Thank you so much. Then we have Anna.
Good morning, councilwomen, councilmen. Thank you for your time. Just briefly, my name is Ana Sanchez, and I'd like to speak on behalf of Ms. Tina Solomon. I met Ms. Solomon when I was a new attorney back in 2005, and she was a prosecutor and I was a defense attorney. And I always say the same story, but when I first met her, I was surprised that she, being a prosecutor, would take the time to encourage and to guide me, and that is something that I will always appreciate. She is one of the persons that I know that has made me realize the role that each of us perform in order to make this judicial system work. She is a person that can look beyond just as being a prosecutor, but can reach out to both sides and have a resolution and come to a compromise. Lastly, I don't have much time, but this is just a testament to Ms. Solomon's character. The city of Phoenix lost a valuable prosecutor. He fell ill to brain cancer. And Ms. Solomon, even though she's busy, she has her personal life as well. I saw how she took time out of her life. She prepared an organized meal for Mr. Cruz and his family during a time that he needed someone the most. And so I know that she has that compassion and that empathy to be a great judge, and I hope you really do consider her for the position. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have John.
Good morning, councilmen, councilwomen. Pleasure to see you today. I'm here today to endorse and support Jim Leonard as the Phoenix City Court Judge. I am the chairman of the Criminal Justice Section at the State Bar, although I'm not here speaking on behalf of the bar. I'm also the past treasurer for Phoenix Pride, and I'm on the board for the Arizona Center for Neighborhood Leadership. I've known Jim for 15 years. He's been a close personal friend and a mentor. The requirements for a Phoenix City Court Judge are pretty unique. There are crushing dockets, they're very heavy caseloads, and the vast majority of the folks you see coming before you are first-time offenders. These are not lost souls, they're not bad people, and so a judge has to have a great balance of great docket management, being able to be efficient and manage a very heavy caseload, being compassionate and helping, as you've heard, folks to have the tools to move their life forward, but also being firm when necessary. And Jim will absolutely deliver on all of those things. He is completely without bias. He is compassionate, but he's firm. He's heard every story. He's not going to be a soft soap judge. He will temper justice with mercy. He is an outstanding person. I could give you anecdote after anecdote. He has made such a difference for thousands of veterans over the last few years. He has spearheaded the Veterans Court for the Phoenix City Court's Public Defender Office. It's the largest Veterans Court in the United States now. The Veterans Court team that Phoenix has put together is being asked to speak around the country as a role model. He has been on the front lines to help change the lives of thousands of people who were there for us and who shouldn't get a free ride, but who just need a little help to get through these problems. He's an outstanding candidate. You will find no one better, and I sure urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Jason.
Good morning. Thank you, council members. I've had the opportunity to address you numerous times and advocate on behalf of very worthy projects. But today and this morning, I have the opportunity and the pleasure to advocate on behalf of a worthy individual. Carrie Withey is before you today. She comes before you highly recommended with an incredible resume and incredible history here in Arizona. I'd like to share a little bit about that background and some of her experience as evidence, which is a good word considering what we're doing today, as to her qualifications. Her roots in Arizona run very, very deep. Her grandmother, Emma Flores, emigrated from Mexico here as a little girl in 1922 and ultimately raised 4 children here in Arizona and saw them through college before becoming a citizen in 1952 at the age of 39. So that makes Carrie a third-generation Arizonan. She was born in Morenci, the copper mining town, and had the opportunity to have a very unique childhood in that she grew up actually within the Grand Canyon National Park. So her childhood was spent at the Grand Canyon, where her father was the principal of the small school up there, and her mother was a school teacher. She ultimately graduated from high school in Prescott and went down to the University of Arizona, where she received both her bachelor's degree and her law degree with honors before becoming a practicing attorney here in Phoenix. She was 33 years ago recruited out of law school to one of the top law firms within the city of Phoenix, and ultimately became a highly sought-after civil litigator and worked on many complex cases as a private practitioner. But about 17 years ago, she became a judge pro tem in other jurisdictions, and 12 years ago became a judge pro tem for the city of Phoenix. That means you have the opportunity to select a candidate this morning who has already done the job. And not only has she done the job, but she has done the job to incredible praise and wonderful reviews. She's had the opportunity to work within the docket. She's highly sought after within the city of Phoenix and is even praised by your chief presiding judge, who said that she would be a credit to the bench and to the city of Phoenix. She's equally busy in her community work and serves on the Foster Care Review Board monthly, reviewing cases. Again, it goes to her demeanor, it goes to her qualifications, and I'll close, council members, with the fact that you have an excellent docket before you this morning of candidates. All of them are good people. All of them are obviously qualified if they've reached this stage. The difference with Carrie Withey is she's already doing the job today. She's doing it well, And as an employer, I can tell you if I could find somebody who's already done the job for 12 years and done it exceptionally, that would be my choice for a position. Thank you. I hope you support Carrie Withey for judge.
Thank you so much. I really want to thank all of you for coming out here. I know that a lot of you are coming out of your jobs and coming down here to give these testimonies, and these testimonies are very important for us to make these decisions. We have a no lobbying clause, so we weren't able to be lobbied by any of y'all. So having these testimonies are very important for us to hear the other side, because a lot of times the candidates really don't express their personal relationships with people, and it's really those testimonies that really let us see the inner person. So thank you for coming down. With that, we're on item number 3. And just to let everyone know is that afterwards, after all 5 candidates have come through and we've interviewed them, that we can actually go into executive session if you need to. Hi, Sandra. Good morning. How you doing? Good. Sandra, what we'd like to do is if you'd like to take a couple of minutes just to let us know who you are and a little bit about yourself before we start the questions.
Well, Councilwoman Williams, Pastor Gallego, Councilman Nowakowski. It's always a little uncomfortable for me to have to introduce myself to people who, fortunately or unfortunately, already know the work I do for the city of Phoenix. But I have had a bit of a change up in the last 2 years, so I think I'll start with that. I am a section chief in the civil division for the law department. I'm what some people affectionately call a fixer, which means when the city needs something to be done, there's a vacancy, there's a hit project or an emergency, I'm one of the go-to people that they can rely on to carry forward with an issue. And my current position is that of the section chief in our public safety section. I represent our police, fire, and emergency management offices. And that is due to a retirement of Denton Casey from that position in 2013. I'm very happy to be back in this area because I do love working with our law enforcement community. It gets me closer to the courtroom more often, and I also love being in the courtroom. But prior to that, as you know, one of my specialties was in the area of elections. We did a lot of work involving redistricting and ensuring that the city of Phoenix can hold its candidate elections during the years that we choose, as opposed to the years that the state chooses for us. And in general, in terms of the city of Phoenix, I am very happy to be where I'm at. At the same time, I'm always looking forward to new opportunities and new ways to contribute, because I am a firm believer that you never want to get complacent. You always want to improve upon new areas, both personally and professionally. And I think this judicial position is a very good way for me to contribute while at the same time staying within the city that I love. And in the areas of practice that I love, which is getting back into the courtroom, dealing with criminal as well as civil areas of municipal law. So I'm very happy to be here today.
Any questions?
I'll ask a question.
Councilmember Williams.
Since you have been involved in the city of Phoenix for quite a while, what have you observed that the budget cuts, what kind of impact has it had on not only your job, but the court system as well?
To me, the most heartfelt impact has been the loss of people. The lack of funding has hurt, in some ways, the court, for instance, as far as the ability to purchase new technologies to assist in the efficient running of the courts. They have done as much as they could in technology, for instance, with their FAIR program or the TIPS program, the ability to pay with credit card or with methods, technological methods that improve their ability to receive the income generated from sentences. Those are all good things, but it does take money to purchase technology. And the courts, as well as many of our departments, are suffering for the lack of those fundings. But really, more important than technology are our people resources. And I think we are starting to feel that impact, the brain drain, the fatigue, even for people like myself who have been with the city going on 20 years. It is tough to continue providing the same quality service while at the same time having to fulfill multiple jobs as vacancies are held open for periods of time, and to also keep up the level of service knowing that many of your most senior people are now gone and retired. We just lost Lisa Takata, and I certainly shed a tear knowing that she wasn't going to be around. But it's people like that that you really feel the loss. And it is budget related, but I think it's also related to the overall atmosphere within the city of Phoenix. So as tough as the budget gets, I am still optimistic that we pull together as a team and as a family. And even with the budgetary tough times, I think we've together got the commitment that it takes to rise above the staffing as well as the budgetary shortfalls.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Gay.
Nationally, there's a conversation about the fines in the judicial system and their impact on low-income people, so that people will get fines that will prevent them from being able to pay their car insurance because all their money is going to the court system or whatever, and they lose their car access to mobility. Do you think that's something we are doing okay at in Phoenix? Is that something we should do differently?
I think we are doing a good job of balancing the competing concerns. It is true that when the economy suffers, the people who often hurt most are the sectors of our community that have the lowest incomes. That is absolutely true. And they are going to be proportionately much worse affected by higher fines. At the same time, if they're in our court system and at the point where they are being sentenced, it's because they have been found guilty or they have pled guilty and they have done something wrong for which there needs to be some accountability. I think it would be a mistake for the courts, as some jurisdictions might, to simply absolve people completely of their sins as soon as they plead guilty. Without that accountability, you're going to have the problem continue, and that's no good for the rest of the community. In the area of health care, we found that if you don't have even a $5 copay, individuals will go to the doctor for a hangnail, for a cold. But even having a small copay, or in the case of our criminal justice system, a small but still reasonable fine, suddenly people, it impresses upon them the importance of needing to use whatever system they're in wisely. In the criminal context, I think it is still important, even for those people who may not have a lot of income, to nonetheless be expected to take that accountability and pay some of their fines. The City of Phoenix deals with it quite well. We do not expect payment up front. We do put people on payment plans. We're not like payday lenders where we're going to charge 35% interest on your $100 fine. But we do expect people to pay, and I think that is just as important as recognizing that many of our defendants who are being sentenced are at critical points in their life due to the economy.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember.
I have a question that's not, well, it could be related to this, but
I'll try to work it in there.
I just want to know what makes you thrive.
Right now, I would say what makes me thrive is I am very stubborn and defiant. In the last couple of years, you know, I've had a couple of challenges in my personal life, and certainly in the work environment. It has been a bit of a challenge every 2 years being asked to go to new areas of law and do new things and start all over again learning things. But that stubbornness in me, to me, it's, you know, it's one of those throw down, okay, it's on. You want me to learn elections law? I will learn elections law, and I will thrive. In my personal life, it has been a challenge to be a single mother. Unfortunately, I have no family here in Arizona. My family's in Hawaii, so as great of a place as it is here, I'm having a very hard time convincing anyone to move out here. So I have no babysitters, and it is very much a challenge to be a single mom. But again, it's my stubbornness where, you know, you don't feel sorry for yourself, you pick yourself up, and you look for the things that are going to motivate you. So you look for the humor in the situation. You look at, in my case, my 2 boys, and what's going on in their lives, and that being a single mother, it means I get to hog it all to myself. I get 100% of the time with my kids, and while that is a lot of work and there are bad times, there are an awful lot of good times. That's what helps me to thrive, both personally and professionally.
I noticed in your resume you talk about how you're the that you counseled police and fire, and you helped out a lot in that. So can you give me a synoptics of AZ Post and some of the lectures that you've given?
Well, my current training would be more along the lines of protecting our officers on the civil end. So, for instance, both myself as well as any of the attorneys on my team would go to the academy and talk about use of force incidents. And the need to balance, obviously, protecting the public as well as our own officers with constitutional concerns. You know, if there is a use of force, everyone will begin second-guessing, which is expected. But at the same time, with the right training ahead of time, perhaps when they do get in those situations, when they have to use force, it will be done in a manner that is respectful of our community as well as our laws. So use of force would be an example of something that we would instruct officers in today. My earliest presentations to ASPOST, I think, were some of my favorites because back then I was a prosecutor. My greatest love was being in court and being in trial and cross-examination and closing argument. And in order to be able to do an effective cross or an effective closing argument, I needed good facts. And so I needed my officers to present good facts in their police reports so that I could persuasively argue and get my conviction. My favorite class at that time to teach at ASPOST had to do with domestic violence prosecution and trying to convince officers that domestic violence victims, you know, when they are in shock, when they want help, when the officer first gets there, that is the time to record their statements, record their mannerisms, because possibly by the time the case gets to court, that victim is going to have reasons why they may not be comfortable testifying. Perhaps they're in fear for their life, perhaps they've changed their mind and they support the offender. But it is the officer who is key at the time of the initial incident to get us the statements and the evidence I'm going to need to successfully prosecute. And so that was a good challenge at ASPOST, relating the legal job I did as an attorney with what they did as officers and how working together we'd be able to advance successful prosecutions.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any closing remarks, Sandra?
You know, I've been here a couple of times, and I think the biggest challenge for someone who is known to you is maybe telling you something you didn't know about me. There's a little blurb in my written thing, but one of my passions is baking. Not cooking, baking. desserts. And as an example of that, this last Christmas, we had a law department bonding exercise between our civil and our criminal side, where we baked goods and had a cookie exchange. And my cookie was the white chocolate coconut meringue cookie, which received very favorable reviews. And I just want to mention that so that you do see that I am a well-rounded individual. And my final point is that certainly in today's world, we look for diversity, not just in the work that we do, but in the lives that we lead, because a diverse workforce and in particular a diverse judiciary is what our public and the people dealing with our court system will relate to. So I think I will be an excellent candidate who can bring good diversity and positive energy to the municipal court. Thank you very much.
Ms. Sanders, thank you for everything you do in our community and our city, and you should have brought some cookies.
Well, I thought about it. I don't know that I'd have enough for the audience, though, and that would just be cruel.
Thank you so much. Next is James. Good morning, James. How you doing? Just a couple minutes of telling us who you are and what you do, and just a little bit about yourself.
Okay, very good. Good morning. Privileged to be here. My name is Jim Leonard. In terms of my legal career, this is my 24th year of practice, which includes 15 as a City of Phoenix public defender. As a City of Phoenix public defender, I've had virtually every assignment that one can have. I've been in 4th Avenue Jail in jail court. I've been at the arraignment floor. Most of the years I had an in-custody division doing trials, trying virtually every charge that there was in the City of Phoenix. And then since June of 2013, I've had the privilege of being the supervising public defender in Veterans Court. So that's kind of the Reader's Digest of my legal career. And inclusive within that is I've also had stints at the County Public Defender's Office and tried every manner of felony, and I also have death penalty experience. I've done 2 death penalty cases. With respect to my personal life, I'm a single dad, and my daughter is, she's now at Grand Canyon. She's a sophomore, and so that's the second portion of my story, but the more important one, to tell you the truth.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And any questions?
I'm going to ask you, you've been involved in the City of Phoenix. What impact have you seen or experienced with the budget decline?
Well, I think certainly budget issues are something that's always front and center. I know I have the privilege of working with Mr. Kula, so Mr. Kula and the Public Defender's Office is always cognizant of budgets and how we stretch budgets and how we assign attorneys and how we assign resources. So I think it's had an impact, but we have good people like Mr. Kula who are working within the constraints of the budget. So to that extent, it has had an impact, but you know, certainly when I say we, the Public Defender's Office has certainly managed having good services and providing quality legal representation within the parameters of those budget cuts. Now, in a perfect world, you wouldn't like budget cuts, but certainly we all have to live with those. But thanks to our leadership, I think we continue, we being the Public Defender's Office, continue to provide excellent legal representation.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gallego.
There is a national conversation about the role of the courts and whether sometimes courts keep people in poverty, so people might get fines that they're close to the edge and it puts them over and they can't afford insurance and maybe lose their car, can't get to work. And could you grade Phoenix? How are we doing on that issue?
I think we're doing quite well. If I was to assign a grade, I'd say a B+. Now, can we do better? We can do better. And as a judge, I think what's important to realize is that we have working class folks coming before the court. So if you're a person in a working class category and you get a $500 fine, what does that mean? If you make $10 an hour, that's a substantial fine. And you can't balance budgets on the backs of working class people. Now, I know obviously, you know, you have to be very cognizant of the fact that it's still a court that you have to manage finances. But I think as a judge, you have to be very conscious of that. Or I think something in terms of where fines are going, besides always being conscious of the fines that you give out to people and conscious of their ability to pay and being conscious of that, asking questions about does the person have an ability to pay, and then fashion an order accordingly. One of the things certainly as an offshoot that we can, I think, do better in the fines area is when we sentence someone to jail, we being, let's say, a judge from the City of Phoenix, the county charges $260 for a booking fee and then $90 thereafter. So I think as judges, certainly when we look at, you know, those costs that are transferred to the city, those jail costs, which are enormous, I think that's something that we can do better and be very conscious of managing public safety, but at the same time, trying to save money where we can and just not sentencing people to jail without being conscious of all the different parameters that come from that. Because those jail costs that are passed on to the city from the county are substantial.
Councilmember Pastor.
This is a question that it is related but not related. So I just want to know what makes you thrive.
I've always tried to have jobs of significance. That's what I've aspired to have. That's why I spent 8 years as a teacher and a coach in high school, which is one of the great jobs I've ever had. Loved it. It gave me self-satisfaction that I was doing something that was worthwhile. And as I was doing that, I went to night law school in Los Angeles for 4 years, got my law degree. And then basically for the past 24 years, I've been involved in indigent defense. I think that's worthwhile. I think when you stand next to someone and you're their voice and you are the person, the spokesperson who's going to ensure that justice is done for that person, that's what's always made me thrive. Whether it was in the felony world, whether it was a person who was charged with a variety of offenses here at City of Phoenix, and it's maybe thrive in Veterans Court. I can tell you, juxtaposed between teaching and the last 2 years in Veterans Court, we're now the largest Veterans Court in the country, single jurisdiction. I have the opportunity to interact with veterans who are acutely ill, young men and women who have done multiple tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I have a chance to help them heal. I can't imagine anything better than that. So if you ask me that from the professional standpoint, that's what I thrive on. From the personal standpoint, I've been a single dad my whole life, and getting through the teenage years was a challenge, but I'm very proud to say my daughter is doing well, and she's the love of my life. So I hope that answers the question on what I thrive on.
Jim, you had some individuals out here talking about the Veterans Court and the impact that you had on their lives, and it was some great testimonies on their behalf. I wanted to ask you if you can share the experience that you had surrounding a court case that you had on People versus Jose Cortez, or what is it?
Jose Contreras.
Contreras, yeah.
Yes.
About the death sentence, and if you can kind of tell us.
Yes. That was my second death penalty case in 1994 in Los Angeles. Mr. Contreras was a member of Mara Salvatrucha, which is a very tough gang in Los Angeles, one of the more violent gangs. The allegations were that Mr. Contreras and the co-defendants were engaged in a series of robberies in which 2 people were murdered. So thus it was a death penalty case. The interesting anecdote is that for the 3 months that the trial went on the 9th floor of the criminal courts building, we were in trial next to OJ.
Oh, wow.
So right next to our trial was OJ's trial. Now it was a little different. There were some differences one could note. I would go buy Mr. Contreras his clothes at Ross, and I would go into the holding cell. There would be the Bruno Mali clothes for Mr. Simpson. So there was just some differences, but it was a very extensive trial, lasted 3 months. I was in charge of the penalty phase aspect of the trial. As part of that, I went down to Honduras with my expert. We went down on the Honduran-Nicaraguan border. We visited with Mr. Contreras' family, found out that as a young kid, he was well thought of in his village. He helped people who were poorer than he. And we had the opportunity, and we accomplished bringing up his family up to Los Angeles to testify in the penalty phase, his mother and his brothers. We were fortunate enough to save Jose from the death penalty. So that was my second one, and I had learned quite a bit from my first death penalty case, and I had improved as an attorney. But Jose was he was a young person. He was 20 when he was charged. And so, but the best that we were going to do, and I've always been proud of this, is that we kept him from the death penalty.
Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else for Jim? Jim, thank you for everything you do for the city of Phoenix and our community, and thank you for being a part of this process.
Thank you very much. Privileged to be here.
Thank you.
Our next candidate. Good morning, Tina. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing great. You have a couple minutes just to tell us a little bit about yourself and some opening comments.
Well, my name is Tina Solomon, and I first want to thank all of you for the opportunity to interview today and be considered for the position. It's an honor, and I'm very excited to be here. With that, professionally, I'm an assistant city prosecutor. I've been with the city of Phoenix for almost 16 years. I'm in the trial group, so I've handled hundreds of trials and have handled the very cases that I would preside over if you were to select me. I have recently graduated from the City of Phoenix Management Academy and have been promoted to an assistant trial bureau chief. So I have the very wonderful opportunity and rewarding to supervise and mentor other prosecutors. Over half my career has been devoted to domestic violence in one way or another. I've prosecuted domestic violence cases, I've participated in fundraising, I have sat on numerous committees for best practices, and just generally to increase the awareness of domestic violence. Prior to working at the city, I bailiffed for Judge Portley. Judge Portley was on the juvenile rotation at that time, so that was my first opportunity to experience how a judge can positively influence or impact a person's life. On a more personal note, I'm married. We just celebrated our 11th anniversary. We have a beautiful child who's 5 years old in kindergarten and learning to read. And her final words to me this morning were, "Mom, I miss you, I love you," and not really grasping the interview process, she said, "I hope you win today." So I'm very, very blessed. I'm blessed with family as well as friends who are in support of me. So that's me professionally and personally in a nutshell.
Let me see if we have any questions from my colleagues. Councilmember Williams.
I'm going to ask the same question again. City of Phoenix has had major budget cuts. How have you seen that has impacted our court system?
Well, on both sides of the bench. In terms of the budget cuts, staffing has gone down. And so The budget, even just economically, when we see people come into the courthouse, they're experiencing a lot of economic turn down and hardship. So on both sides of the bench, we can see how the budget and just the economy in general has affected people.
There
Any other
is
questions?
a national conversation about the role of the courts and sometimes keeping people in poverty. So someone might get a fine and be unable to pay car insurance, or they lose their car, they can't get to work, they can't pay the fine. Could you grade us in Phoenix? How are we doing?
Well, I think we're doing really well for several reasons. One, because of the problem-solving courts. And Phoenix is very good about focusing on individualized justice and considering what is appropriate in the case. I mean, it is certainly not one size fits all, and I think our courts and the judges on our bench are very, very good at that. Of course, there are mandatory fines, and above all, you would follow the law. But in many cases, the judge really considers everything and takes a holistic approach, as I would do. Consider whether or not fines are appropriate. Is community service better? Is it better for a case to be diverted? Is it better for a case to go forward and there be jail as punishment? I think the judges on this bench, and I agree, take a very restorative justice approach in trying to look at the person individually and determine what's best for that person as well as the public in general.
Councilmember Pastor?
Yes, my question is, what makes you thrive?
What makes me thrive? Well, I will tell you, I come from a background that we had very limited means. And at 8 years old, I remember this vividly in my grandparents' backyard, and I was so upset by all of the unfairness in the world that I was going to be a lawyer. And I was told right then and there, we can't afford to send you to college, we certainly can't afford to send you to law school, you're going to have to work hard to prove that. And so working hard has really been something that motivates me. And it's what I teach my daughter as well. I think you can accomplish anything that you want to, but you have to work toward those goals. So that's one thing. The other thing is doing the right thing. And I will tell you, each year when I get my statute book, I open up the front cover and I write in the words, work hard and do the right thing. And that definitely motivates me as well, because I think, again, one size doesn't fit all, and I think you have to take a holistic approach. You have to look at all of the circumstances, and you really need to, do a gut check and determine what is the best thing and do the right thing and always follow your instinct. So those things drive me.
Tina, we had individuals that gave some testimonies on yourself and about how great you were as a mentor and your community involvement. But I noticed that there wasn't that much in your resume about community service and your volunteerism and all that. Can you give us some examples, or
yes,
are you involved in the community in any community service projects?
Yes, and I think community service is important, and I don't think my application accurately reflects my feelings on community service. With my experience with the domestic violence, I've really tried to focus on the youth, because I've seen the effects of domestic violence on children in the cases that I've prosecuted when people have come in with children. So I've tried to focus on the youth. Again, I do an annual fundraiser. I help with an annual fundraiser to organize and raise money for children in local DV shelters. There are 3 shelters in the Valley that we focus on: De Colores, Sojourner, and Chrysalis. And we do that at the time of Halloween because, as you might guess, children can't go outside the shelter. So we try to raise money for those kids so that they can have a nice Halloween party within the safety and the confines of the shelter. I've also read in the elementary schools. The Garfield Reading Program was a program that I was involved in to go in and read to the children. And I have to tell you, there's nothing scarier than sitting there and having kindergartners or first graders look up at you and expect this wonderful story. So that was a little intimidating. I currently volunteer in my daughter's school in the Madison Public School System. So again, I'm reading to kindergartners. Excuse me. But I think youth is important, and I will tell you the most rewarding community service experience I've had was mentoring high school girls. And it was a Women's Mentor Day, and it was the opportunity for high school girls to be introduced to professional women. And that was rewarding for me because you could hear the hopes and the dreams and the fears of these young girls, and I was able to share my stories of, again, working through school, not having the means, but learning how to work hard and get through schooling and focus on that. So I was able to share those stories of success, and that was truly rewarding for me. In terms of community service in other places, I've I have participated in the Veteran Stand Down, which I also find rewarding, having people come in and, illustrate and try to advance their position so that they can get the misdemeanors behind them. So I definitely participate in that. So I try to be involved, but again, my focus really is on the youth.
Well,
and I do want, if I can add, Mr. Chair, I think community service is important, and I fully believe that a person should lead by example, and I try to do that. I also think judges, it's important for community service as judges, and I would continue to do that community service because I think judges decide cases that affect people. And it's important to be out in the community, to be involved, to see how those decisions affect people individually and the community as a whole. So I do believe in community service, and I would continue to do so as a judge.
Thank you so much. Any closing remarks?
Again, thank you for the opportunity. I have dedicated my entire career to the City of Phoenix Municipal Court, and I consider that my home. Day in and day out, I have handled those cases. I'm familiar with those cases, and more importantly, I'm familiar with the people that come through that courthouse, and I think that's the most important quality in a judge, the ability to listen and to relate and connect to people. You have a very tough decision before you. All of the candidates are knowledgeable about the law and have integrity, and I also believe judicial demeanor is very important. But I think with me, you have someone who has dedicated my career to the City of Phoenix. I know the people that come through there. It's often their first time or their first interaction with the city or with the courthouse, and I know how scary that can be. So I feel with my familiarity with the city courthouse that I would be an excellent candidate for the position.
Thank you so much, Tina. We have 2 more to go. So what do you really feel about this assistant city manager?
Yeah. Let's get the rules.
Hi, John. How you doing?
Good, Mr. Chairman. How are you?
Doing great. We'd just like to have you take a couple minutes just to tell us a little bit about yourself, and you have time to just let us know who you are.
Sure. Well, first of all, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for taking the time to hear from me and everybody. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. My name is John Tatz. First and foremost, I'm a family man. I've got a wonderful wife, Jenny, who's here to support me today. Between us, we have 7 kids. She has 4, I have 2, and together we have 1, so we're kind of the Brady Bunch plus 1. Professionally, I went to the University of Iowa Law School. It was a top 20 school at the time. I graduated with distinction, which is in the top third of my class. I did that despite working over 30 hours a week as I went through school. Since I had a weekly shopper route at 9 years old, I've always worked. I've always had a good work ethic. A couple of years later, I moved out here to Arizona. My dad had lived out here. I'd fallen in love with Phoenix, so I moved to Phoenix, took the bar here. My goal was to be a prosecutor. I had a friend and a mentor back in Iowa who is now a district court judge back there. He was a prosecutor. It's what I wanted to do. But council members, I'll tell you the best thing that ever happened to me is I didn't get a job as a prosecutor. My first job was with a public defender's office. And the reason that's good is it gave me empathy and it gave me compassion for the people who were making these bad choices and either being accused of committing these crimes or actually committing these crimes, because they weren't just going to be a notch on my belt as a prosecutor. I got to learn the people, got to learn the circumstances. I'm a big believer in personal responsibility. They weren't excuses, but I got to learn something about the people who were making these decisions. I eventually did get my goal to become a prosecutor. I worked for 3 different municipalities, Flagstaff, Scottsdale, and Peoria. Flagstaff, I was a trial attorney. Scottsdale, I started off as a domestic violence specialist. I went to training both in-state and out-of-state to learn that position. I was the chairperson of the prosecution subcommittee of the Maricopa County Task Force on Domestic Violence. We actually wrote the protocol that the police departments and prosecutors still use today to investigate and prosecute domestic violence cases. My second stint with Scottsdale, I was a motions and appeals prosecutor. And again, best thing that could have happened to me in terms of I had to learn the law. It was a very aggressive defense bar, creative motions, lots of appeals. I had to research, I had to learn the law, and in that time I feel like I did learn the law as well as anybody in misdemeanor, and I've obviously been able to apply that for the last 20 years. I was also the code enforcement prosecutor there, so I learned about some of the unique issues involving property maintenance cases, looking at building codes, zoning codes, fire codes. From that, That experience obviously led to my being hired in Peoria as the prosecutor. I was the city prosecutor there for 2 years, where again I wore every hat, supervised the staff of 2 as well as a part-time prosecutor. And in 2001, I decided to go out on my own and open my own defense practice. 90% of what I've done has been in city courts such as Phoenix. For the majority of those years, I've had a contract to be a public defender in the city of Phoenix. I had one in the city of Peoria for several years. I have one in the city of Mesa now for the last almost 6 years. And I've been privileged over the last month to be the public defender assigned to their Veterans Court over in Mesa. So I've had some real good experience with the specialty courts. Finally, I've also been a pro tem judge. Since 2009, I've been a volunteer pro tem judge over in the Superior Court. For a couple years, I was a pro tem judge for the city of Scottsdale. And in the summer of 2011, I was appointed by the Superior Court to be the presiding pro tem judge over the Wickenburg Municipal Court while they were transitioning to judges. It's being a pro tem judge that has led me here today. It's let me know that this is what I want to do with the rest of my career.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Williams.
City of Phoenix has had some very difficult financial times, and we have cut everybody's budget, including the court system. Have you seen an impact of the City of Phoenix, and if so, what, and what would you do in response to it?
I can't say that I've seen an impact. I think that's a tribute to the court staff and judges. I have been there, Councilmember Williams, now obviously for, like I said, the last 13 years, and I think the Phoenix City Court system is the gold standard for limited jurisdictions courts. So I have not personally seen or felt the impact. I think one thing obviously a judge can do is focus on both imposing and collecting different fees. Obviously there are provisions in the law that allow for certain fees to be waived based on economic hardship, but I think sometimes that might be overused. So one thing obviously the court can do to contribute is to be more proactive in both imposing and enforcing fees and fines.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gallego.
Nationally, there's a related conversation to that about the role that the court systems sometimes play in keeping people in poverty. So we do lots of fines. If you're near to the edge, you maybe can't afford your car insurance, you can't drive, maybe you can't get to work. It sounds like you would say that's probably not a problem in the city of Phoenix, that the court system is sort of playing a role in keeping people in an unsustainable economic condition. Will you grade us?
I would say that, no, Phoenix has been very good about that. Again, I've been fortunate enough to work before judges who have taken into account financial hardship and have waived the fees when appropriate. Imposing a fine on somebody who gets picked up for shoplifting food to eat doesn't make any sense. I mean, obviously that's a fine that's just not going to be paid. Collection fees are going to go on top of it. So obviously at that point the court's role I don't think is to fund itself, but to try and do something to make sure that person doesn't come back before the court, some form of rehabilitation, whether it be probation, whether it be the threat of suspended jail, whether it be a suspended fine, something to give them the opportunity to change the behavior. And I would like to see something more like the specialty courts do, where we're not just imposing a sentence and letting the person walk out the door, but if possible, and again, I obviously know funding is always going to be an issue, but some sort of court that could help the person so that they can deal with the situations in life that put them in that position in the first place.
Councilmember Pastor.
I would just like to know what makes you thrive.
What makes me thrive?
Mm-hmm.
Just 7 kids.
that does it.
I know that feeling.
You should.
In the context of what we're here to do today, it's my professional experience. Again, I feel like I've got a great balance. You know, I've done everything from the prosecutor's perspective for 6 years. I've been a defense attorney for 14 years. I've been a judge pro tem for 5 or 6 years. And I think professionally speaking, I've achieved the balance that I wanted to. The best judges that I've appeared before have that even down the middle. You couldn't call them prosecution-oriented. You couldn't call them defense-oriented. You would say they're listening to everything. They're making the right decision. And I think my professional life for the last 20 years has led me to be in that position. That would be what I would strive to do as a judge. So I think in terms of what would make me thrive as a judge, it would just be my past experience, the balance that I've had through the different things that I've done in my life.
Thank you.
John, we had individuals that came and gave some great testimony about how you inspired them in their lives. And one of the things that I like to hear from you is your any community service, any programs or projects that you're involved in.
Well, professionally, I haven't as recently as I would like, but I used to be involved with community legal services. Working in the landlord-tenant section, I would meet with tenants who were on the verge of being evicted, and I would counsel them, help them, see if there were ways to at least delay those evictions from happening, see if there were ways to keep them in a little bit longer so they could get their situation taken care of so they'd have somewhere to go. Obviously, as I said, I do pro tem in Superior Court. That's an unpaid position. This Friday, I'm on a panel of a mock trial from some high school kids going on over at the city court here. I'm honored to be able to talk to them and apparently answer some questions that they may have. On a personal level, it's mostly been involved with my kids. I've often coached their teams, both either the main coach or an assistant coach, basketball, football, baseball. I've been fortunate enough to be involved in their school activities and their church activities. And I volunteered next month to work at a Special Olympics track and field meet out in Glendale. I'm really hoping to get more involved with that. I'm very excited about that. I've had some friends with some special needs kids. That's something that's very near to my heart, and I think that's going to be a great way for me to get more involved in the community.
Thank you so much. Any closing remarks?
Again, I'd just like to thank you all for the time. I really appreciate it. I, again, believe that my balance has led me to this position. I really think that I would thrive as a judge. I've earned a reputation as both a prosecutor and as a defense attorney for being fair, for being reasonable, both from my adversaries as well as my colleagues. When I've pro tem'd, one thing I've really put a lot of faith in is the staffs. You know, they'll have pro temps come through the week, and I've often had them tell me, you should do this. You should do this for a living. You have the right demeanor for it. You have the right decision-making skills for it. You're very efficient. Can you come back the rest of the week? And I think that's about the best compliment I could get from anybody. So again, thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you, and thank you for everything you do for the community and helping out and pro-tempting out there too. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All righty, we have our last candidate.
Next door.
Good morning. How you doing?
Good morning, Chairman. Really
Here you have a couple minutes just to tell us a little bit about yourself, and so we get to know who you are.
Very good, thank you. It's good to be here today, Council. My name is Carrie Withy. I am a Arizona native. I was born in Morenci, and I grew up at the south rim of the Grand Canyon National Park. I got my law degree, well, my undergraduate degree, as well as my law degree from the University of Arizona in Tucson. That was in 1983 that I graduated from law school, and I still honestly can't believe I've been a lawyer for 32 years. But that's true. And the first half of my legal career I spent in private practice. I was an attorney at Gallagher & Kennedy, a litigator, and I also did, after that, arbitration. I was an arbitrator for the Federal District Court and the NASD. The second half of my legal career, I have been working as a pro tem judge for the municipal courts. Primarily the last 11 years, it's been almost exclusively here in the city of Phoenix court. And it's been great. They've been calling me 3 to 5 days a week for many years. And in fact, I had to ask for the day off today from the job so I could be here to interview today. But I'm really proud to be a pro tem judge over there. It's a great court. It's as you know, it's one of the largest in the nation, and it's one of the busiest. And it's won a lot of awards, and it is a model of excellence for other courts to emulate. So it's a big privilege to work there. For me, though, the pro tem position has its limitations personally. As a pro tem, I'm not allowed to really participate in court committees. I can't act as a liaison for our court to outside agencies. I attend judges' meetings, of course, but I don't have the same input and impact in those meetings on court policies and procedures that I could if I were a full-time judge. And based on my experience over there, I think I could bring a lot of fresh ideas, a lot of innovative ideas. I have some that I've just kind of accumulated, and I really think that I could have a significant impact as a full-time judge there if I were given that opportunity. So I'm here today to try to rectify this and to ask you for that opportunity.
Well, thank you so much. And Councilmember Williams, any questions?
Based on what you just said, what are some of your fresh ideas? What would you like to see some of the changes?
You know, the court has just done so well, but there's been a lot of budget cuts and things in the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few different areas that I think could use some continued improvement. One of them is our mental health court. And the reason I say that is because we only started that mental health court specialized docket about 2 years ago, in 2012, I guess it was. And, you know, it's still kind of in the early stages. But the AOC just came out last month with the new guidelines and standards for the mental health courts in Arizona. And it was signed by the Supreme Court, Arizona Supreme Court, in February. So we now have some real definitive guidelines on how to set up that court and run that court. And of course it costs money, but I think that those defendants and that particular docket is very expensive because we've been using the Rule 11s, we've been sending them to Superior Court. But I think that if we were to really take some time to look at that court and figure out ways to use the community partnerships that offer the services of Magellan and behavioral services and try to integrate that into that court in a more effective way to staff that court and to try to transition that also into the jail court, that I think would be really smart and really good. I also think that it would be a whole process then of early screening, trying to figure out who should belong in there. I also think that you can then integrate the treatment programs and the medications and all the different things that will come to bear, because putting these people in jail is not the answer. And helping them to become more stable so that they can hopefully not reoffend and get back into their community and with their families and things like that, I think is the real goal. So that's one of the ideas that I had. Another one I have is we have had a sentence monitoring unit at a SMU unit that took the place of our SAS program. SAS was our screening and assessment program that we had for years, and it went by the wayside when the budget was cut last year. But the program was designed to try to help defendants post-adjudication who have been assigned to classes and have been, and they have to be screened and told how many classes to do and in what different areas. It could be domestic violence, parenting, it could be addiction issues, DUI, all kinds of different classes. We had to do away with that. So now we're trying to monitor that in the courtrooms. We are putting more of the burden on the defendants themselves to find their agencies, to figure out their intakes and their screenings. And that's kind of difficult for a lot of our defendants over there. And so I think if we could figure out a way to get that program more streamlined, of course with the cost effectiveness always in mind because of the budget issues. But I do think there's a lot of work that we could do to improve that because we haven't had enough time to really improve it yet. But I think with some effort, we could really bring some new ideas into that and still make it better than it is so that those defendants are better served.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Gay.
There's a national conversation about the role of the judiciary and the impact on people in poverty, and that sometimes people will get fines when they're close to the edge and then they can't pay their car insurance, they lose their car, they're not getting to work, they can't pay the fines. Could you grade Phoenix on how we're doing?
I would grade Phoenix as pretty good because I think that we are cognizant over there of that very issue. We have many defendants in our court who especially in the last couple of years, have really struggled paying fines, and there's a lot of surcharges added to the fines, and it becomes quite a financial burden for many of them. A lot of them who are out of work and everything, as you said. And I know that there is a national question about this right now, especially with some of the things that have come to light in other cities. But in our court, what we do, and I work the 205 court from time to time, which is, we call it the money court, and that's where defendants come in when they are delinquent and haven't been able to pay and things like that. And we really try very hard to assist them in figuring out creative ways to make to meet their burdens. Sometimes they're eligible for community service in certain cases, and that gives back to the community, and it helps to them sometimes to find a job in the community by doing this community service. Other times over there we are doing programs where we allow them to be on a reduced amount of payment if they can show proof that they really can't pay the normal amounts that are required. And then we monitor that more closely and have them come in. And even if they're paying a lot less per month, as long as they're continuing to make the effort to pay, we work with them and we try to accommodate that. But I think early on, I think at the stage where you're doing the pleas and taking the pleas and the pleas are being generated, that's where you really have to look at the problem and try and figure out, is fine the best remedy in this situation, so that you are getting the people that could pay them and the ones that can't, if it's not a mandatory fine, that you can work with them in ways to make it more just and more creative.
Councilmember Pastor.
You could take it either way. It's not a direct towards the position, but what makes you thrive?
What makes me thrive?
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing that makes me thrive the most is continuing to learn things and being really active in the community, in my family, in all the different people that are around me all the time, because that keeps me young, keeps me vibrant, it keeps me interested in everything that's going on. If you fail to continue to learn, I think that you get really stagnant and you sort of become sort of in a bubble where you're not really aware of what's happening out there. So that is very important. But the other thing is people. You have to be around people. You have to be connected with people. You have to, for me, to be fulfilled, I need to have all of those. I would say those two things are really important to me. And I've tried to live my life that way.
Earlier we had some testimony about a little bit about yourself and your involvement in the community and all that. One of the things that I was reading in your resume is that if you were chosen as a full-time judge, that you'd like to serve on a court committees.
Yes.
Which court committee would you like to serve on and why?
Well, you know, to be honest with you, I don't know all the available court committees because I've never had access to that kind of information. But when I go to judges' meetings, I know that they oftentimes will select or have volunteer judges to say, let's work on, for example, the probation issue. We really need to dial this in. We need to figure out what we're doing right, what we're not doing right, how we can improve it. And they'll have maybe 2 or 3 or 4 judges work on that and do the research, find out what's going on in other courts, find out how we can, what we're doing, you know, what can work for our court. And there's a lot of different, you know, they're all the time asking I think the full-time judges to participate in those kinds of things so that it can always be sort of on that cutting edge of figuring out where we need to go from here. And those are the kinds of committees I would welcome to work on. I have a really strong work ethic, and I am happy to be the first to be there and the last one to leave, and I will put all my efforts into helping whatever committees would come up that way.
Well, thank you so much. Is there any closing remarks or any comments?
You know, the only thing I do want to say is that as good as the court is, I think there's always room for improvement, and you have to have that attitude. I really think this is a pivotal time for our court. We're in the process, of course, of getting a new presiding judge, and that's going to be great. We really miss Judge Song-Ong. She was great. She has big shoes to fill. But I also feel that we've lost a lot of key court staff people in the last year from retirement. Just a lot of knowledge and wisdom has gone out that door. And we still have these budget issues. So I really feel like this is my time. I really can contribute significantly to the court if I'm full-time. And I really appreciate the opportunity to try to do that. And I appreciate your consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you so much for everything you do out there in the community and in our court system.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, we've just had some excellent candidates. It's a very tough decision. I would like to go into executive session to discuss this, so I move that we move into the executive session to deliberate.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We'll go into executive session. We'll be right back. Thank you.